Bright Cutie. Every student matters.
Hello my dear students. Today we will be taking up this chapter, the banyan tree. So what do you know about banyan tree? First and foremost, we know is banyan tree is our national tree, right? Second thing, banyan tree is a big, huge tree, right? So let us read what this chapter is all about. But before we start, I want to ask you, have you all actually seen a banyan tree? Just go and find out, maybe in some garden or maybe in some, you can go and find in some village. Probably you might find a banyan tree. Alright, before starting the chapter, we will read this snippet, what this chapter is about. Have you seen a mongoose? Have you actually seen a mongoose? Well, I have. Not once, but thrice. You have read in lesson 9 that a mongoose can fight with and kill a snake. We have already read it earlier that a mongoose has the capability of fighting and killing a snake. Look at the pictures and read the lines given along with them. The banyan tree. The fight of the cobra and the mongoose is a classic drama often seen in India, and the outcome is largely the same. If you guys have visited a countryside or any village area, you must have seen the fight between the cobra and a mongoose. Well, it is something which is commonly seen in the villages. And outcome is almost the same every time, which is the snake is killed by the mongoose. The mongoose is not immune to the venomous bite, but is faster and quicker in motion than the snake. We all know that the snakes are dangerous, they are poisonous. Venomous means poisonous. So we all know that the snake's bite is a poisonous bite. And mongoose is also not immune to that. What is the meaning of immune? Immune means not affected by something. So even mongoose is not immune to the poisonous bite of a snake, but it still is able to kill the snake. Why? Because it has a quick reaction time. It is very swift and fast. The cobra assumes a posture of defense and attempts to reach the animal by a sweeping strike. But the quick-moving mongoose jumps out of reach and comes at the snake from another direction before the snake can get into striking position again. The cobra assumes. What is the meaning of assume? Assume means takes a position and comes into a posture to defend himself. So the cobra, it takes a position and it takes a posture, it comes into a posture to defend himself, and it reaches the animal, it reaches the mongoose with a sweeping, and sweeping means swiftly. So with a swift strike, it reaches the mongoose, but the mongoose is quick, so it quickly moves, it quickly jumps out of that particular position and comes at the cobra from a different direction, even before the cobra is ready and comes into a striking position again. The mongoose attacks the cobra before it is ready. This constant movement tires and discourages the snake, and the mongoose is finally able to leap in close and bury its teeth in the snake's neck, usually severing the joints of its vertebrae. Now, this constant movement where the mongoose is dodging all the time, the snake gets tired and it gets discouraged, and the mongoose is finally to leap in close, which means the mongoose comes really close to the snake, and finally it buries its teeth in the snake's neck, and it usually severing the joints of its vertebrae. What is the meaning of severing? Severing means divide by cutting or slicing. So when the mongoose bury its teeth in the snake's neck, it severs, it cuts or slices the snake's vertebrae. Now, what are vertebrae? Vertebrae is basically interlocking bones that form the spinal column. Okay, so the mongoose, it buries its teeth and finally slices the vertebrae of the snake. Alright, so you must have seen a banyan tree. I think everybody would have seen a banyan tree. It's a very common tree, the national tree of India. This is a story about the author about what the author saw as a young boy when he was sitting in an old banyan tree in his grandfather's house. So this story we are going to read, the banyan tree. It is about a boy, the author, who was sitting under a banyan tree with his grandfather in his grandfather's house. Alright, coming to part 1, we'll be starting the chapter now. Though the house and grounds belonged to my grandparents, the magnificent old banyan tree was mine, chiefly because grandfather at 65 could no longer climb it. So now here the author is trying to, he is trying to show us the scene, what exactly belongs to him, how his grandfather's house looked like, and what was it that author wants to describe. So he is telling us that the house and grounds, the whole house and the whole ground, it belongs to my grandfather, grandparents in fact, but the magnificent old banyan tree, magnificent means huge, big, attractive, big banyan tree which was very old, it belonged to the author, and he gives a reason why it belongs to the author, because his grandfather was too old. He was 65 years old, that he could not climb the banyan tree anymore. So this fellow who was the author, he was a young boy, so he could climb up the banyan tree. That is why he said the banyan tree was my possession, it wasn't my grandfather's anymore. Its spreading branches, which hung to the ground and took root again, forming a number of twisting passages, gave me endless pleasure. We all must have seen, if a banyan tree is like this, its branches, they go into the ground, form roots again, and then here another tree starts growing up. So the branches of banyan tree, they go up in the ground again, form roots, and then another tree grows up. So banyan tree forms a very, it is very huge. It grows very in a very big tree. So its spreading branches, the branches were spreading, they hung to the ground, took roots again, and another tree started blooming from there. So this fellow is saying that those branches and those twists and turns of the branches, it gave the author immense pleasure, because he could climb from here, there, hang to the branches. So he could do a lot of activities in the branches and the tree. So it gives an immense pleasure to the author. Among them were squirrels and snails and butterflies. So the animals like insects, you can say, or smaller animals like snails, squirrels, butterflies, they used to be playing in that particular tree. They used to make their burrows in that tree, holes in that tree. The tree was older than the house, older than grandfather, as old as Dehradun itself. So now the author is trying to tell us that the tree was so old. It was older than the house. Probably if the house is say 30-40 years old, or maybe even 50 years old, the tree was older than the house. The tree was even older than the grandfather. Grandfather was 65 years old. So the tree was even older than that. Probably we don't know. Banyan tree might be 80, 90, 100 years old. We don't know. He says the city of Dehradun, as old as the city, the tree was as old as the city. It was so old. It was such a big, huge, magnificent banyan tree. It was as old as the Dehradun city. I could find myself in its branches behind thick green leaves and spy on the world below. I could hide myself in its branches. Now the author says that I can hide myself in the branches of the banyan tree behind
thick green leaves. He says that the tree was so huge, so big that I could actually hide myself behind the branches, behind the big green leaves, and spy on the world below. As in, he could, look around whatever was happening in the vicinity, sitting on top of the banyan tree, and hid himself. Being hidden, he can keep an eye or keep a watch on everything and everybody on the earth, as in the vicinity. And it's in Uttarakhand, Dehradun, not Uttaranchal. So spy means watch secretly, to look at something in a very secretive manner, where you can't, where the other person doesn't know that you are sitting here and watching, or standing here, hiding here and watching. So that is spying.
My first friend was a small grey squirrel. So the author is telling, the young boy is telling, that his first friend was a small squirrel, grey coloured squirrel. Arching his back and sniffing into the air, he seemed at first to resent my invasion of his privacy. Now, what does this line means? It means that the little squirrel, it did not like, resent. Resent means dislike or feel angry about something. About what? Invasion of his privacy. What does invasion mean? Invasion means the action of entering a place where you are not wanted and disturbing somebody. So the little squirrel, it did not like the invasion of his privacy. It was the squirrel's place, right? So the author's invasion, he just entered the place. So the squirrel kind of not like the invasion of the young boy. And it reacted by arching his back and sniffing into the air. But when he found that I did not arm myself with catapult or air gun, he became friendly, and when I started bringing him pieces of cake and biscuit, he grew quite bold and was soon taking morsels from hand. But then, when the squirrel noticed and understood that the young boy did not have any kind of air gun or any catapult in his hand which could harm the squirrel, it became friendly. And it became so friendly that it started taking these small pieces, morsels. Morsels means small pieces of food. So the young boy started getting food for him, pieces of cake and biscuits. So the squirrel got so friendly that it started taking these small pieces of food from his hand itself. Before long, he was delving into my pockets and helping himself to whatever he could find. And it was not long that the squirrel got so friendly that it started delving the young boy's pockets. Delving means going deep into. So the squirrel, it started, fiddling with the pockets. It started, trying to dive deep into the pockets to find out if there is something to eat. He was a very young squirrel, and his friends and relatives probably thought him foolish and headstrong for trusting a human. The squirrel was a very young squirrel. It probably, very young squirrel. So the boy thought that his friends or relatives would have thought that this young little creature is very headstrong, or probably it is foolish that it is trusting a human. What does headstrong mean? Headstrong means doing what you want without listening to advice from other people. So probably the author thought that the squirrel is extra headstrong. The relatives and the friends would have thought so, that it is too headstrong to trust a human being. In the spring, when the banyan tree was full of small red figs, birds of all kinds would flock into its branches. The red-bottomed bulbul, cheerful and greedy parrots, myna and crows squabbling with one another. So now the author is telling, when it is the spring season, the banyan tree is full of small red figs. What does figs means? Figs are small fruits. So the author says, when it is spring season and when the banyan tree is full of small red figs, birds of all kinds would flock into the tree, into its branches. What kind of birds are there? The red-bottomed bulbul is there, the cheerful and greedy parrots are there, the mynas are there, crows are there, they are squabbling with one another. Squabbling means to argue in a noisy way about something which is not very important. So the birds, they're just, kind of arguing with each other over nothing. They're just making a lot of noise. During the fig season, the banyan tree was the noisiest place in the garden. Now, what is the fig season? Fig season means a time when the figs appear on the tree. So during the fig season, it is the banyan tree which was the most noisiest place in the whole garden. Why? Because all kind of birds used to come together and flock on the branches of the banyan tree. Halfway up the tree, I had built a crude platform where I would spend the afternoons when it was not too hot. Now here the author tells, halfway up the tree, on the banyan tree, almost halfway, he had built a crude platform. Now what is a crude platform? It is a simple and basic raised level surface on which people can sit or things can be kept. So he had made that kind of a temporary place where he would sit down in the afternoons when it was not too hot. I could read there propping myself up against the tree with a cushion from the living room. He used to take his books along with him, and he made a comfort place for himself. So he used to sit there at that particular platform and read the book. He used to get a cushion from the living room of his house, and he used to just sit there and read the book. Propping myself up means leaning against. So he used to put a cushion there on the platform and lean against probably a trunk or the branch and read a book there. Treasure Island, Huckleberry Finn and the Story of Dr. Dolittle was some of the books that made my banyan tree library. So now he tells the kind of books he used to read. He read Dr. Dolittle, the Story of Dr. Dolittle and the Treasure Island, Huckleberry Finn. These were few books which he used to take to the banyan tree and read there. So he says it looked like a small library in the banyan tree which consisted of these 2-3 books. When I did not feel like reading, I could look down through the leaves at the world below. So when he was bored of reading, or probably he didn't feel like reading, he would just sit there and look at the ground below, as if there are activities are happening on the ground, and he was just sitting at the corner, hiding behind the leaves and the trunk or the branches, you can say, and just looking at the world below. Imagine what kind of a feeling it would be. And on one particular afternoon, I had a grandstand view of that classic of Indian wiles, a fight between a mongoose and a cobra. Now he says that when I was sitting there, for the first time, I saw the fight between a mongoose and a cobra. Now, what is a grandstand view? Grandstand view is a clear view from the best position. We all must have heard this word grandstand. Grandstand view as in when we go to the cricket ground or probably a hockey ground, we all try to find the tickets for that particular place where the view is
extremely clear of the pitch, of the ground. That particular place is called as grandstand. So we all try to find the grandstand tickets. If somebody asks which tickets you want, the vendor, then we tell him we need grandstand tickets. So that is the place where you get the clear view. So this fellow is saying that he was sitting at a position where he was getting a clear view of the fight between the cobra and the mongoose, and that was an Indian classic, because that kind of fight is still famous all over India, and especially in the village area where these creatures are easily found.